Hey everybody, Professor Ball here. How's it going? So I just looked at your last assignment, which is where you looked at the sample essays for paper number 2. And I didn't write any comments in that assignment, but I did want to give you some feedback as to what the papers did well and what they need to work on. The first thing that I look for with any paper is MLA format. So you need your information here at the top, your last name and the page number. Your name, my name, the class, and the date. And just so you know, your heading information here goes on to page 2, on to page 3, and so on. You need a creative title. The title of your TED Talk is already taken, so you need something original. And then you'll notice that each paragraph, or each new paragraph, is indented. You're aligning left, which means this lines up right with that. Now, in terms of the content of the paper, some people were kind of commenting on, for example, this one, they thought the intro was too long. And I get that. For the intro, you want to offer background or context. In this case, it's one sentence. In paper number 2, I jumped ahead. Paper number 2 has a little bit more. And what I mean by background or context is what's going on with the situation, what's happening, what do we know about it. So this one's a little bit shorter. Then you have your title of the TED Talk. It doesn't have a thesis, which we'll get to in a minute. But this one, it's a little long, but it still has all the information that the student needed. You have your little bit of background, then you introduce the talk, and then you tell me what the talk is about. And then what I'd be looking for is a thesis statement. And the thesis statement is what is it that you are going to be analyzing in your paper. And here, he has a couple things. He talks about visual contact, but really it's this last sentence here, which would be the discussion of images, statistics, hypotheses, charts, and facts. So one tip is to look at the language of the prompt that talks about claims, that talks about evidence, rhetorical appeals, and those could serve as a foundation for your intro. So this starts off well, and then you'll notice that every paragraph has a point. We looked at the From Summary to Analysis handout, and the point is, well, what is this paragraph going to talk about? In this case, it's the section of the essay about how the speaker keeps the audience engaged. This is about eye contact. You have your point, you have your illustration, and then the explanation. Well, why are you telling me this? Well, maintaining a visual contact with the public can generate the message to arrive direct and in shape. Then the person talks about the speaker's tone. This is his point. This is the illustration. And then this is the explanation. The speaker used a formal tone. Well, why did he do this? To show that his argument should be taken into account. I think this paper does a good job of point, illustration, explanation. So I'm telling you this because if you look back at paper 1 and I said it seems more like summary, well, if you're telling me the person does this and then they do that and then they show this, that's just summary. What I'm looking for is analysis, which is how do they make you convinced of what they're trying to get you to do? So this essay does this well. The person makes a point, data, they illustrate it, and then, well, why are you telling me this? Well, the purpose of the speaker to show different types of data is blah, blah, blah. Another thing that comes up in the handouts on MLA format and the in-text citations is if you're quoting from the TED Talk, you want to include the speaker's last name and the time in which they spoke. So this one can be found between 5:24 and 5:55. All right. Then the person talks about the audience and moving on. Seems to end kind of abruptly, though. Looking here, though, let me just see real quick. I don't think he talks about rhetorical appeals, so that might be one thing that he is missing. And just a little note, This is not MLA format. This is APA format. MLA format would be this. The last name of the person and then the page number. Not the person who's speaking in the year. All right, so this one does a pretty good job of answering the prompt. I don't think he or she talks about the rhetorical appeals, but otherwise it's pretty good. And the works cited page is set up very well. You need your two sources, and then this is your TED Talk. This is how I would prefer your TED Talk be formatted, and there's a couple different ways in the handouts that it should be done, but this is the way it should look. Now this one is formatted well, and I showed you this just a second ago. This is background. This is about the talk, but what the person doesn't have is a thesis statement, meaning in his TED Talk, Lee uses blah, 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 and blah, blah to make a convincing argument. But what the person does do is the paragraphs have a point. Personal experiences, that's what this paragraph is going to be about. Research and statistics, that's what this paragraph is going to be about. This is how the speaker kept his audience engaged. Well, he used humor. So even though the person doesn't have a thesis, each paragraph has a point, an illustration, and then, well, why are you telling me this? The E part of the pie? Well, the use of humor shapes his claim because it helps the people in the audience become more interested. Then you have your outside sources. I think the outside sources should come in at the end of the essay, right before your conclusion. This is correct with MLA format. And there you go. Now, just so you know, for the conclusion, you're wrapping up your analysis of you're wrapping up your analysis of the argument that you looked at. You're not wrapping up the topic. You're not wrapping up with the future of robots. You're wrapping up with claims and evidence, rhetorical appeals, and so on. And if you're still listening, add the word robot to the comments section of your paper when you turn it in, and I'll add a couple points to your paper. So there's that. This person has the entry correct, and if you're using a library database, you need this information. But the person is forgetting the second outside source and their TED Talk. And then finally, our last paper, MLA format looks good. Everything should be double spaced. This is not. You do have some background here. Then the person introduces the talk. And then you have your thesis. To support her argument, she does this, and then she does that. And just so you know, if you say case study in the first part of your prompt, well then your point in the next paragraph should be case studies. There's a point there, and there's a timestamp. The next part was extensive personal research. This is not necessarily personal research, so she went out of order. She does case studies and then data, and then she doesn't do it in order because personal research comes next. So this is a bit out of order. So if you're going to say, I'm going to talk about 1, 2, and 3, then your paper should develop as 1, 2, and 3. But the person does have a point. She has the illustration. And and then why are you telling me this? Well, it was important to compare and consider what others had to say on the topic. All right. So then you have your timestamp here. This is a good way to transition into your outside sources. You say what the person was talking about, and then you say if somebody had the same ideas or if they said something different, which comes from the prompt. And you have more of your outside source. And then this is also a good works cited page. It's alphabetized A, B, D, T, W. This is how your TED Talk should be formatted. So I would say paper 1 is the best one. That's the one on what's happening with our planet. It's a tie, though, with paper number 3. And then the weakest one, which isn't really that bad, it's still a decent paper, is the second essay. So I haven't given you any D or F's papers. You have A, B, and C here. So hopefully that helps you out for paper number 2. All right. Good luck. And as always, let me know if you have any questions.